Hello, everybody, and warm welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kate Yushkova, and I'll be your today's host. I'm an online marketer here at Semrush. We're very happy to bring the personal SEO consultation format back to you. And we're excited that today we have two wonderful, amazing, knowledgeable guests, Kevin Indig in the live chat, in the Hangout here with me, and Jason Barnard in the live chat, in the YouTube live chat. So Kevin, can I ask you to tell a few words about yourself? So maybe for those who don't know about you by chance.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you for all the participants. I am currently the VP of SEO and Content at a company called G2. We used to be called G2 Crowd until recently. And I am also a startup mentor at the German Accelerator. And until recently, I used to work at Atlassian. So many people still know me from there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us. And I'm going to introduce Jason Barnard, who is in the live chat, and he'll be taking questions from the audience in the live chat. So Jason is the founder of Kalicube.pro, and he is the host of a very popular SEO is AO series, which is search engine optimization is answer engine optimization. So this is a very popular podcast, and it features wonderful people like Rand Fishkin, Yus Devalk, Cindy Kram, Bill Slavsky, Alida Solis, and a lot of other wonderful people. And today, Jason will be taking questions from the audience in the live chat. And before we jump to the main part of our webinar, I also would like to ask our guests to introduce themselves. Just a very brief introduction. What's your name? Where are you from? Where you work? And so yeah, that's basically it. And Sherry, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi, my name is Sherry Deutsch. My day job is I work in personalization and optimization for Verizon Wireless. My side project, and I'm here to talk about strapsaver.com, which is a product that shortens bra and bathing suit straps without sewing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the introduction. And Pavel, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hi all, my name is Pavel and I'm working for Kanbanize. It's a Kanban software for project management. So basically I'm dealing with mostly with PPC and SEO stuff, but I won't question anything about PPC tonight. So.
Awesome, thank you. Cindy, what about you?
Yes, I work for MillerWells.com, or we're a ITW company, Illinois Toolworks Division. So we're one of the leading manufacturers of welding equipment, and I work in search and paid as well as the previous person, but I won't talk about paid, mostly the search and search engine content.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So before we go to the main part of our webinar, I'll just say a few words about the format. So each of our guests will have 10 minutes to ask their questions and get their answers from Kevin. And while everybody in the live chat is invited to ask their questions to Jason, so Jason will be taking as many questions as he possibly can. He'll be sharing his expertise with you in the chat. And we also plan to have 5 people today, but we have only 3. So if you feel like you're ready to take on the world, your camera is working fine, your microphone is working, just write me an email. I'll drop the email address in the live chat. And I will add the first people who wrote to me to the Hangout here. So they will also be able to ask their questions to Kevin. So I guess that's it from my side. And I guess we can jump to the questions. So Shari, would you like to go first?
All right, great, thank you. Well, I lost a lot of my traffic in the updates that came through in August and October, as a lot of they called them the Your Money or Your Life sites, which I'm not sure how we fell into as we're a clothing accessory, but we did. And so we've been looking at a lot of different things. And one of the questions I had is, how fast should a site be to rank well? I know they say it should be good. Right now, we get a 77 out of 100 on the Google page search, but obviously a higher number is better, but caught up by a bunch of things that we can't fix that are Google options. So how good is good enough? How good should it be? Should we get a CDN? What are your thoughts on what's fast enough?
Sure. So thanks first of all, for your questions. I'm trying to come to the answer from multiple angles because it's a relatively broad question, but actually there are a couple of things that I can give you to help. So first of all, Google often, and this trend is increasing over time, looks at verticals and compares the strongest sites as a benchmark, right? So if you were looking at the credit vertical or credit industry, you kind of want to benchmark yourself against maybe the 3 to 5 strongest sites, right? This is what we see more and more, because the challenge is that, site speed is relatively subjective and dependent on the type of site you're dealing with. Say you have an e-commerce site that lists thousands of products. Now, it's probably not going to happen, right? But let's just pretend, and you compare that with a Wikipedia article that has hardly any rich media and it's just basically written text. That's, of course, a completely different playground. And so, to give you a precise answer, you want to benchmark yourself against the 3 to 5 biggest competitors for your main keywords, right? You want to see how fast they load and try to be at least as fast as them. This is kind of I think the most fruitful approach, because there are some numbers, some relatively arbitrary numbers out there, like should be 200 milliseconds, right? Loads. But then, first of all, does that account for every website? And second of all, what metric are we actually talking about? And this is the second part of the answer for you, right? There are a couple of metrics that define page speed, and the most important ones are the time to first byte, time to first meaningful content, and time to first paint. And there are a couple of others in those realms. So what you want to do is you want to basically create a spreadsheet. You want to compare your site against the 3 to 5 biggest competitors in your space. And you want to look at these different metrics and see how you compare. There isn't really, so time to first meaningful content is kind of the, I would say, one of the most important, probably the most important page speed metric, because it tries to reflect the time it takes until people can interact in a meaningful way with your page. But look at more metrics, get a broader view, and then that should be your benchmark.
All right, thank you for the guidance.
Sure.
How often should I update my content? Is it overall? Is it specific pages? Is the homepage the most important, or the landing page that people arrive at the most? Where, what's the best place to concentrate my energy there?
So in terms of updating content, there's another kind of 2-part answer I want to give you. The first one is, you could simply track the traffic of a page over time. And if it declines, you would then go in and see, should I update the content here? And that kind of funnels into the next question, which is, the next answer, which is that you want to basically come from a user intent perspective to answer that question. So there's certain queries or keywords people look for in which it is really important to have content that is the most up-to-date as possible, right? So if you were to Google something like, I don't know, Mueller report or Notre Dame or something, then of course those queries all of a sudden have a very high need for so-called freshness. There's this concept out there called QDF, which means a query deserves freshness, right? And it's basically, the idea is that keywords need fresh content at different points at the time, right? So for example, Notre Dame, I think until the fire, probably didn't deserve a lot of freshness, or didn't need a lot of freshness, right? One a lot of historic answers. Now that changed all of a sudden because we have these real world changes. And so now there's a high need of freshness. And so when you look at all your content, you want to look at it through the lens of, is this a topic I'm addressing that needs a lot of up-to-date information, or is something else more important, like, a vast selection or a broad inventory or a good overview or, a high credibility and trustworthiness. So user intent is really important here.
And so again, as I've stated, I'm a one-man band, and as far as I can find, we're the only product out there that shortens bra and bathing suit straps without sewing. So, and we have limited funds where, it's a product my friend and I invented ourselves. So if we have a limited funds, would you put money towards, like, we're a WordPress site, plugins like WP Rocket and Yoast, the pro version? Or would you put money towards maybe investing in getting reviews and link building and things like that, weekly blog writing? What's an overall strategy you think that would help? So if we had great SEO, our site. Luckily it was our off season, but we're still trying to gain back. We're down 17% now in organic, but we really want to figure out what's the best strategy with limited time on a higher level.
Yeah, the challenge you're self-confronted with is, all of these things are important. Links are important, content is important, user experience is important. So what should you do when you have limited resources, which is the question of almost every business. It's just a smaller scale in your case. And the answer should be informed by some sort of an audit. So you want to look at where your highest need is. Do you need more content? Do you need more links? Do you need to work on design, speed, and all that? And you want to base that off of maybe competitor analysis, right? So you want to see, hey, these are the, 10 keywords that I really want to rank for, my 10 core keywords that are most important for my business. And then you want to look at who's ranking best for these keywords. Maybe, again, the top 3 to 5 competitors should be enough. And then compare their pages with yours and try to understand where they do better than you, right? So you take something like Semrush, you look at the backlinks, you look at the number of backlinks, the number of referring domains, the quality of links, and you'll need to dig a bit deeper because all of these topics are, very broad. But you want to basically create a spreadsheet with a high-level view, compare content, links, maybe user experience, page speed, and then you should see some glaring gaps or issues, right? That should get you to about 80% of the answer of where you should focus your efforts, and then the rest of the remaining 20% are basically around your product offering, right? There is still, of course, the aspect of how does my product compare, but this is then when we dive outside of SEO, right? So to give an SEO specific answer, you should do an audit and compare metrics with your competitors.
All right, great. And do you have a WordPress plugin that you like better than others?
To be honest, not really. I like Yoast, I like All-in-One SEO, and I think there's a third one that I'm missing right now, so apologies for that. I think the question of plugins is most pressing when you think about functionality, which is not really an SEO topic, and page speed. So there are a couple of decent page speed plugins, and I'll send a couple of those into the chat so you have an idea, that help you to, with things like caching, CDN, or basically a delivery network, and the rendering of the page. But in most cases, I would worry less about that, would worry more about content, links, and things like design and layout.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, and I hope this was helpful to you.
Very much so, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Sherry. And I think we can turn to the next our participant. Pavel, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I want to ask, my first question is related to URL structures and the click depth, because I've seen a lot of people arguing between these two, which one is more important, the URL structure or the click depth. In my experience, I've seen huge increase in traffic when we talk about building silos and URL structure. So but I'm asking you because I saw John Miller's comment recently that actually click depth is much more important. Which one do you think is more important, actually?
That's a great question. Let me kind of set the stage here a little bit and then give you an answer that is as precise as possible without a specific use case. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about click depth versus the URL structure, I assume what you mean is, should you have categories, subcategories, and then pages within the URL structure, so include all the different taxonomies, maybe tags, or should you really aim to have the shortest path possible? And I want to kind of tear that apart a little bit, or put that in a different perspective. So we talk about click depth. It basically means how many clicks does it take from the homepage to get to your most important pages. It is not always a question of URL structure. And I think there is a sweet spot for both. right? And so this is where we get to an exact answer for you. So I think you can still have your cake and eat it too. So you can have a nice URL structure with categories, subcategories, products from a high level perspective, and have the shortest path to these product pages possible. It comes back to the question, how many outgoing links, how many outgoing internal links you have on your homepage, right? So are your most important pages accessible from the homepage, or maybe from the footer, or maybe from the top navigation? So you want to be a bit creative of how you link to those pages in your homepage, and that will optimize the click depth, while at the same time allow you to have a good solid URL structure. And it's really important because URL structure is really important, because I personally see more and more benefits from a clean, optimized taxonomy, right? You have a very clear hierarchy of this is my category and this is all the articles, or this is all the products in the category, because it helps you with this topical relevance. And when we speak about siloing and speaking about, you know, creating these kind of dedicated areas for certain topics, then URL structure, after my mind, plays an important role. So the short answer is you want to do both.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen this because actually I've researched a lot of what you did in Atlassian, because our products, I mean, I'm working for basically almost the same product. For Jira is considered our main competitor, and I can see that the silo structuring worked pretty well, and we tried it. So yeah, that's why I was asking. And the other thing that I want to ask is related to the number of keywords. Usually when you create a new piece of content, I can see lately that if longer pieces of content and they rank for a lot of keywords, there is a higher possibility to outrank all the other competitors in this case. Is it better to take this direction on building only like long form heavy content, or attacking single keywords with single pieces of content?
That is a great question. And the answer is that it depends a bit on your abilities and capacity. If it's easier for you to write one long piece of content, then do that. And if you can write dedicated pieces of content, then do that. Usually the approach that I prefer taking when being asked that question is to start with a long form piece of content. And you will see that there's some other, that this page will rank for some other keywords that are addressed in this long form piece of content, but they never really make it to page one. And in most cases, that is because they don't have the necessary relevance. And in this case, then you want to start creating a separate, maybe shorter piece of content for those keywords, right? So you start with a big one, and then you see, okay, it ranks for the main keyword, but there are a couple of sub keywords that it ranks okay for, but not perfectly. And then you create own pieces of content for these other sub keywords. So then you take it out, right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but would you exclude the small keywords? Would you exclude them from the original content, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So sorry, you have like you know, a long form piece of content with A, B, C, D of topics addressed, right? Then you see, okay, topic C starts to rank okay. You funnel that out. You take all of the content out. You still refer in the main page, in the long form piece of content. You say, hey, you want to learn about C. Here's a whole article about C. You link to C, maybe with an anchor text that is strong, and then you create a new piece of content.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it makes sense actually. Well, thank you. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but let other people ask their questions as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And always feel free to tag me on Twitter with some questions, or DM me on Twitter or something.
Yeah, sure.
Pavel, I just wanted to say that you have 4 minutes and you can ask another question if you want. So just,
can I?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Just a second because I wrote them. The other thing is that we're trying to, I don't know, to do link building all the time, as I guess all SEO people trying to do. But at some point, it seems like it's not working anymore. Like we are trying to attack really high volume keyword, for example, so we reach number 5, but the other 2 positions above, they have like enormous amount of links. Is it worth it trying to outrank them and be on number 1 position? And how, like, do you have some recipe of doing it if link building is not working anymore?
Yeah, so I assume what you say is when you say link building is working anymore, is that probably those competitors aggressively built some links in the past where it was much easier, and now it's hard to reach that limit and threshold. And so, yes, I think it is still possible. It is a relatively broad question. The issue at hand here is that there's so many different factors playing into competitors ranking high.
Yeah.
What I've been able to notice for quite a couple of years now is that backlinks are not the only factor. It first of all depends on the niche you're in or the vertical you're targeting. And it also depends on what kinds of links that those competitors have. So what you might want to look at is what is the, for example, these are just a couple of ways to slice and dice backlinks of competitors, is what is the number of backlinks with a hard anchor text that the page is ranking for? What is the number of really, really high quality backlinks? Like if you want to use something like, different proprietary backlink metrics from different tools, whatever. And how does the number of referring domains compare to the amount of total backlinks? So these are just a couple of ways to give you perspective. And you want to look at that to get an understanding of where your competitors get the backlinks from. And in lots of cases, you'll see that they either have really great content, or they have, they did a lot of PR outreach, or they have some cool campaigns or some marketing campaigns, something in those realms. And then you want to try to emulate that and do it better. I know it's a relatively high level answer that I'm giving you here, but I think even when you have a much, much better user experience or a much, much better product, you can catch up to the link profiles and do better along the way because links only make a fraction of what it takes to rank highly. So of course, if you're completely new startup very early on to the game, it will take you a while to compete. But it is still possible to rank better and outrank highly competitive companies. And probably, I know that, for example, if you mentioned that you're a competitor to Jira, the landing page of Jira is insane in terms of backlinks. It is stronger than the homepage of Atlassian.
I've seen it.
Because data, it's absolutely insane. But I think there's still ways to get around that. After my mind, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about this, it is not enough nowadays to rest your perils or to think that, okay, now I have this strong backlink profile, I don't need to improve my product or user experience or content. It's a running competition. And I think if you do well over time consistently, you can be competitive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Pavel. And I think we can jump over to Cindy.
Hi. Can I ask you like kind of a specific Semrush question?
Please.
So I work in a tool and I'm trying to sort of create the same data in Semrush. So I work in a tool called Audience View. And what we do is I've been tracking non-branded welding terms to like certain big box stores. So Miller Weld sells, Miller Welders is sold through distributors, and we've sold online. We actually have other brands that are sold e-commerce. So there's a couple different ways to sort of slice and dice the data in the view, but I've been sort of creating projects. And then I use like a non-branded, like 100 to 150 words. And then I put those against different competitive, I'm going to call them competitive customers or competitive sites. I just wondered if I'm doing it the right way in Semrush, because then I have to have multiple projects, but I want to see how, for example, Lincoln's doing against it and ESOP's doing against these non-branded terms. And then I want to know how Lowe's and Home Depot and the bigger customers are doing. I'm getting different data out of our tool, Semrush, out of the other tool, but as long as trajectory it's going the right way. Is there a better way to do that?
Have you tried out tags for your keywords?
I do have them tagged, but it was just harder to set up alerts. So I wanted sort of an alert each day, like, am I dropping in welding helmets, for example? And am I dropping against certain competitors in welding helmets? So I've seen like that whole category is very volatile for us. We rank sometimes in the top 5 or 6 for welding helmets. We're one of the top welding companies in the country. We're like Coke and Pepsi with a company called Lincoln. So I'm always tracking against Lincoln Electric primarily to see how we're doing, as well as some of the online competitors as well. So yeah, I could try. Yeah, maybe I have to work on my tags.
No worries about that. I think tagging is honestly the best way to go there, because you already get that competitive view in your project area in SEMrush. So you can see how your competitors are doing for a certain keyword. And if you want to, please correct me if I misunderstood you, but if you want to take out all your brand keywords, then I think creating a specific tag for that is probably the easiest way.
Okay. So then I could just set up an alert or something just for those branded keywords or those non-branded keywords. Okay, yes. That sounds cool. So my other question is we have multiple sites that we're going to be bringing on board in the next year to 2020. So we're millerwelds.com, and then we're going to have our whole welding portfolio brought on. They have a lot of articles already. They're actually ranking for stuff that we should rank for. The whole article syndication maybe way that we sort of attack it, having one sort of big source. We use a backend called Sitecore. So we may be able to attack it that way. But as I go into these higher level meetings, I'm wondering the duplicate content may become an issue. Some of these articles actually make more sense on a different product than they do on ours. So do you have any high level suggestions on how to structure this from the get-go? We're probably looking at 2,000 possible articles, and some of them usually rank very well for stuff like how to MIG weld or how to TIG weld or very, very specific user queries.
And sorry, just to elaborate on your question, so you want to syndicate these articles to other sites?
It'd be our own sites. So the company is proposing that under our CMS management tool that we can sort of like have one source, right? Like we'll have one major article and we could pump those to the different sites, but obviously you've got duplicate content issues maybe, lots of different issues that start to arise.
Oh, for sure. Are you able to add a canonical tag to all these syndicated articles?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's the best way to go, even though it is cross-domain. I would start with the canonical tag back to the original source so that you can benefit from the content on other sites as well, maybe to just enrich the product or the user journey. And if that doesn't work, I would consider a hard meta no index on these syndicated articles. I think you're really on the right trajectory here. You definitely want to make sure that the duplicate content doesn't have negative impact on your rankings. And so I would, approach this problem in several steps or phases. And the first step would be canonical. If you see Google doesn't really buy it because it's cross-domain, it's two different domains, then I would try a hard meta no index.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, we just added the fact that we could do that individual canonicals per article. We're not using any really sophisticated article tool on it. It's so we're trying to figure out how to do that because right now we're manually adding all the schema data and the microstructure data. So is there any third-party tool that adds all that data to the backend, or do we always have to manually add that?
You could, as a workaround, insert it with Google Tag Manager, which would allow you to add structured data or schema, and maybe a couple of other metadata as well. It really depends on how your backend is set up, and how easily you can integrate Google Tag Manager. This is unfortunately where I would have to take a look at the site and to give you better recommendations. But on a high level, I would strongly suggest you check out Google Tag Manager.
Okay. So all the new sites are being set up with the new tag manager, so we're not running it with the snippet, so maybe that'll be an option.
Yeah.
How important is it? So we added reviews to our site when I first got here a couple years ago. So it seems to be doing really well, but Google doesn't always like the SERPs, and sometimes they're working, sometimes they're not. Is that just a JavaScript issue possibly? We're kind of stuck actually in one of our sites. We can't get Google to read the SERP data for the reviews.
Interesting. So that is a good question. Usually Google has become really good in getting reviews or in pulling reviews, and you're talking specifically about rich snippets with the 5 stars?
Yes. So it's like
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. But usually, even with minimal schema markup, Google has become really good at pulling these. Do you know if competitors have these rich snippets or none at all?
No, not at all. We're actually kind of the pioneer with this sort of with our brand doing that. So it's working on our Miller Weld site. It's not working on our Hobart Welder site, which is funny because it's using the same interface and it's using the same code. It's just, we can't quite figure out what the scoop is. We use a company called Power Reviews, and we've been going back and forth for about a couple months, and our IT department and theirs are kind of stuck. So I didn't know if you ever saw any issues where something we're not looking at that we haven't looked at yet.
Usually not. And all because we're historically a review site at G2, so we do a lot with that. But no, usually it depends on a couple of different factors, and then there are also probably some unknown or unmentioned factors that go into this, and most importantly, some metric that reflects credibility or trustworthiness. So this is what I saw in my experience with star reviews, is that certain sites usually get them after they hit a certain threshold in terms of trustworthiness. Something you might want to look at is domain age, and of course, the new sites don't have a high age, but even more so, the backlink profile. So I would see if these new sites are being linked at from highly trustworthy or credible sources in your industry. That might do the trick there. And as long as the actual stars are being rendered properly when you go into Search Console and do the fetch and render, then there shouldn't be a problem with it. The last instance that I would maybe want to check is how it looks on mobile. So is it rendering properly on mobile? Are stars integrated on mobile at all? I do assume very much so. But do you find any issues from that perspective? Because what I see in lots of cases is that meanwhile, most sites have been transferred to mobile first indexing. And that sometimes, even because sites or companies don't receive a lot of mobile traffic, people assume that mobile doesn't matter for them. But the reality is that Google still crawls them at the majority of the time with mobile Googlebot. And therefore, if you have issues with mobile rendering, then that might transfer to your desktop appearance as well. So these are just a couple of hints I'm throwing at you here to check out. But I don't assume that it's a technical issue, because 90% of the time, after my experience, it's not a technical issue.
Okay. Yeah, and it is rendering correctly in Google Search Console. So just not liking us. I'll look at all that. I'll look at all that stuff. I have one more question. I don't know if I have time, and maybe somebody will ask this. I have seen a few AMP articles coming up and ranking higher for certain keywords in the last few weeks in our site. We're a very niched market, so I was surprised that I saw AMP articles. I've kind of got pushback on our end that AMP's not a thing we want to go to. So it's always in our bucket list of should we look at it, should we not look at it? But we're very, we have a lot of robust traffic, but obviously we don't apply to anybody. You have to be looking for a welder, or you're in the welding business, or you're in automation welding. I mean, it's a niche market. But like lately, as of this week, something like welding supplies and a review site ranked higher than us for that with an AMP article. So just sort of your opinion on a manufacturing site or us type of site going to AMP articles.
Yes. So if you have editorial type of content, right, as a blog or something different, something comparable, then AMP is definitely something you should look into and consider. And you'd also look at the keywords that these AMP articles appear for. So it seems like they have some sort of a editorial type of appeal, if you will, right? So I do see that as well with a lot of review sites, and again, we're one of them as well. AMP works really well for us, but not in every case. Now, there's also AMP for e-commerce sites, but as far as I understand, this is not the highest. This is not as applicable to you. So I would look into AMP. It's a little, Pandora's box that you're opening there, because the implementation of AMP can be trickier as it is often displayed. So you want to closely monitor how these review sites appear and how Google leverages AMP. Is that in some sort of a news box at the top of the search results, or is it in regular search results? I wouldn't yet expect AMP to be the needle mover that allows certain companies to outrank you. I think it adds a little benefit, but it isn't yet, comparable to something like backlinks or content. So what I would also look at is if the user intent might have changed for these keywords. Is Google preferring more editorial content, more comparison sites, more review sites over yours? And if so, how could you come up with competitive content formats? Could you try out some sort of a blog article that has a very kind of comparative appeal, or that lists products and looks a bit like a review site? So I would experiment towards those into that direction.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
That's a great idea.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And I think we can turn to the next guest, Maud. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Just unmute yourself. No, you're still but we still can't hear you, I guess. No, not really.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Mohammed Asad. Okay, so this is my first time, and for having me here. I have a few questions with Kevin. So shall I proceed?
Yeah.
So Kevin, the very first thing is I want to understand how this keyword clustering works. So there are there are some pages of HubSpot, and from a single web page, they are like ranking like 700 or 800 keywords. So how does this thing work? So can you give me an idea?
Yeah,
So
sure.
how do
Yes. So how can you rank a single page for several keywords?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we've seen over the years is that this concept of targeting a single keyword is really over, right? And nowadays you can be relevant for even thousands of keywords. And it comes back to Google better understanding the relevance of a page or the relevance of content for different formulations of a keyword, right? So sometimes people look and I know, for example, I brought up in the past this example of Airbnb, and they have pages that rank for things to do in San Francisco or things to do in New York City. But they also rank for exciting things in San Francisco, or what should I do on the weekend in San Francisco. And the reason is that Google understands that the user intents are pretty much the same for all of these keywords. At the same time, it is also possible to rank for lots of different keywords when your content is addressing lots of keywords, right? So when you write about topics instead of keywords, then you have the chance to rank for many keywords. Say a topic could be, I'm trying to come up with something relevant, right? But say something like SEMrush reviews, right? Then your user intent is probably to evaluate SEMrush as a tool. And so maybe you could also rank for something like, can Semrush do X, or is Semrush better than Y? You know, they're all connected user intents, and that's why you can rank with a single page for many different keywords.
So for that, I have to, like write a very big blog post.
It's not always a blog post. It depends on the keyword or the topic you're targeting. And again, you want to look at it from a user intent perspective. So ask yourself, what is that person that is supposed to consume this page or content? What is that person trying to achieve? What is the job that they're trying to get done, right? Is it just a simple piece of information, or is it something much more in depth? And then in the second step, ask yourself, how can I create an experience based on content in written form or video or audio or a web app or a widget that satisfies this intent in the best way possible?
Okay. And so I have one more question. It is related to link building. So I am working for a client, and they have a very new website. So again, I guess somebody has asked the question, and you have responded that you have to look for RDs, root domains, and RDs to page. So like page authorities and all such things will work. So there are few websites who have and like I've prepared a keyword list. So the top 3 competitors have linking root domains of somewhere around like 1,000 and above that. So do I need those many key backlinks in order to outrank them?
Most of the time, yes. So you can take a proprietary metric like trust score or page score from Semrush, right, which would be the equivalent to other proprietary metrics in the space. Or you can look at something like referring domains or total number of backlinks. But if you dig deep, if you do an in-depth analysis, a deep dive, I recommend you to slice and dice this a bit better, right? So we know that referring domains, for example, is a much better signal than the total amount of backlinks, because you can have 50 links from the same domain, and it's not as powerful as having 50 links from different domains, right? It's a broad statement, so like I hope nobody kind of starts arguing with me about that. I'm making a broad statement here, but what you actually want to do is slice and dice that data. So look at, okay, so you have 100 referring domains to a page. What anchor text do they use? What is their strength or page strength or site strength or whatever proprietary metric that you want to use, right? How well do they rank for the keyword? So you want to slice all that data as good as possible, and then build your profile accordingly, because otherwise what will happen is you see your competitor has 100 incoming referring domains, and then you get 100, but you still don't outrank them, right? And so the answer here is in the details. So pull all the backlinks to a spreadsheet, slice and dice the data as good as possible, and get a better understanding of where the backlinks are coming from and what the quality of their backlinks is.
Okay. And and if somebody like starting with link building, and if like they need links from high authority website. So suppose somebody need a link from G2 Crowd. Okay, so what strategy somebody should follow? So should they directly reach out to the editors, or like they build some sort of partnership with the writers? So what do you suggest?
All of the above. So first of all, you want to be in a position where you actually deserve a link, right? So if your site looks really horrible and your content is poor, then nobody's really inclined to link to you. So you have to make that's the first step. The second step is you want to see how you can actually build a relationship to these sites in your space, and it's not always easy. I would start maybe on social media, Twitter chats, just connecting with the person. And then as a third step, try to create something that's in their interest. So so there's this concept of account-based marketing out there, and I like to compare that to account-based link building, where you look at a site and getting a link from them is super important, and so you reverse engineer how you could get to that link until for example, you look at what content do they publish. And then you think about something that you can create that they would love to publish, or you ask them for a guest article. It's something in similar regards, right? But it all comes back to trying to build an actual relationship with the site you get a link from, or the person running the site or writing the article, that is based on a win-win situation. It is basically a trade. Like, what do you have to offer to that person that is interesting to them as well? And a lot of times it is content, sometimes it is money, and sometimes it's just great material that they can reuse. Maybe you can create a cool infographic for them. Maybe you can sell them some sort of a stock image. Think about what you have that you can trade, or what can you create that the other side desires.
So it can be money, it can be anything.
It can be anything, yeah.
Whatever, like they have interest in.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, and when you start with doing SEO for a new website, okay, and you are starting with like keyword research, till what extent you think, okay, I am happy with my keyword list. So like, is there any number, or you like after a month or after 3 months you gradually increase it accordingly as like seeing your efforts? So how does that?
Yeah, I think you gave the answer yourself. I would do keyword research every quarter, or extend the keyword research you have. You don't have to start from scratch, but do it on an ongoing basis, because the relevant keywords change, search volume changes, competitors change, and your site, in terms of relevance and authority, changes as well. So repeat the process on an ongoing basis. It also keeps your mind fresh and sharp in your space, and add some more competitor perspective to the mix. Like, what are the keywords your competitors are ranking for that you don't rank for? And then lastly, it also depends on your capacity, right? If you can write 10 articles a week, you can do keyword research probably every month, or extend on your keyword research, right? If you can write 1 article per week, it's probably enough to do it quarterly.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's it from my side. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for your questions. My pleasure.
Thank you, Maud. And I think we can jump to our last but not least guest, Jason. Jason Q, am I right?
Quay, yeah. Hey, Kevin. Couple of questions for you. The first question I have is, when working with early stage startups, what is your go-to plan to helping them acquire their customers through SEO?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I love it. So with early stage startups, the challenge is that a lot of these startups have products that don't yet have search volume or search demand, because they're by definition early stage, and they should do something new, something innovative. So in most cases, there's no demand, or there's hardly any demand. So first of all, you want to make sure you create content or something in related to content that addresses the low search demand that is already there, because that's usually low-hanging fruit. But the much bigger question is, what is a topic that people are already searching for that you can create content for, and get some traffic from? So in most cases, innovation doesn't mean you invent the light bulb, right? It often means you invent a better light bulb that is maybe 10x better than what's out there currently. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how can I create something that is valuable to the topic of light bulbs, and can then show people my new invention?
Excellent. Sounds good. What specific ways have you seen web hosting help with SEO? I mean, I'm familiar, a lot of people focus on, hey, we need to have like a fast web site, and obviously that's going to come from a good web host and CDN. Are there other areas you've seen that web hosting can help on the SEO side?
Yes, first of all, the impact of web hosting on your page speed depends on the scale of your site. So if you have 100 or maybe even 1,000 pages, I think the impact of web hosting is relatively limited. And I know there are going to be some exceptions to the rule. But if you have a million pages to your site, then it's a completely different game. And so besides a CDN, I think another factor that comes to mind is how well your database is set up and how fast it can be queried in terms of page speed. So if you have a host, or if basically you have to decide to go with a host that supports you strongly in setting up a really fast and quickly queryable database, then you want to go with that one. That's an important factor in that case. And that's, by the way, a factor that a lot of people disregard when it comes to page speed optimization. And then, of course, the quality of the CDN is a major factor as well. And then you want to put things on top to consider like service workers as well, right? So something like Cloudflare, for example, I think really benefited from their functionality of their CDN. And a CDN is not always a CDN. But coming back to what I said before, it also depends on the scale of your site.
Excellent. Sounds good. So going back on the trying to get the customers for an early stage startup, what would be your plan in trying to get, say, if you're tasked with getting 1,000 customers in the first year for an early stage startup, what would you do?
I would start with customer research. So in best case, they already launched an MVP or an early version of their product, and I would go back to the first customers and users of that product and squeeze as much information out of them as possible. There can be qualitative research where you actually get some customer on the phone or email exchange, and you really want to figure out what is important to them, how is the product valuable, and what channels do they use, right? So the question is also in the room, is SEO even the right channel? Or it could be quantitative research where you have some sort of a survey that pops up on the site, or you do some quantitative analysis on your aggregated data where you would look back on your Google Analytics or Mixpanel or whatever data you have to see what works best. What are the pages people spend the most time on? What are the pages people convert? What are the strongest keywords, et cetera, et cetera. So I would start at the user base and try to really understand what they're looking for. And what their user journey looks like, right? Sometimes user journey can take 50 steps, say you're buying a car, or it can take a single step, say you're trying to get a single piece of information. And so I do assume that the startup is not on the side of a single step in user journey. I think it's probably more on the other side of the spectrum. And so you want to understand how can you best create content and help your users to get through the user journey as quickly as possible in the most efficient way as possible. And so, as I said earlier, it comes a lot to creating the right content for a topic people already know or a problem they already have. And then it also comes to building a relationship. So how does SEO fit into the greater scheme of channels? Is there, and here we're talking about nuance for different types of startups, right? If you, obviously the strategy for something like an Uber looks very different for, compared to something like a Netflix or Spotify, which then again looks very different for something like an Airbnb. So there's a lot of nuance to the business model as well.
Excellent. What would you say are some of the biggest wastes of time that you see people do when they're trying to get new customers through SEO?
That is a really good question. Biggest waste of time is looking at every site and business model through the same lens. And so what I mean by that is that depending on the business model and type of site, for some it's you know, technical SEO is much more applicable than backlink building and vice versa, right? It really depends on what you have. And I wrote about this on my site, and I had this matrix where I looked at different startups and what is most important to them. And I look at, I think, 3 different factors. It was content, technical SEO, and backlinks. And so you first want to get a best understanding of what is most important in your field. What do you need to have to succeed and to be competitive? And so what I see, to make this a bit more refined, is that some, for example, marketplaces, they focus too much on link building, while they should really focus on technical SEO, or they focus too much on content and expect that to move the needle. So different types of sites and different business models need different foci or emphases of SEO, and you cannot look at every site the same way.
Real quick, why is it for marketplaces you feel that they should focus more on technical SEO compared to link building or content?
Well, because for marketplaces, they usually, it's easier for them to scale their site, right? So think of something like Amazon, eBay, Airbnb, and a couple of those marketplaces. It doesn't always have to be e-commerce, right? It can also be something like the gig economy or something in those regards. But they scale with inventory, right? And they have a lot of user-generated content. Also think of a Yelp. And so for them, it's much easier to build a strong authoritative site quickly. They might want to build a link here and there. Yes, it's not that they don't need to pay attention to link building at all, but roughly, I think 60 to 70% of their efforts should go into technical SEO to make sure that their site scales in a good, efficient way, which is usually the bottleneck they have to pass, much more so than content or backlinks. And by the same on the other side, on the other side of the coin, if you have a startup that is, say, a mobile app, then of course you have App Store optimization, but you might want to build a lot more backlinks to rank, because most of the content you have to create yourself, right? You don't have an inventory or user-generated content that can help you get there.
Excellent. Sounds good. What would you focus on asking someone when you are trying to hire someone for an SEO position?
That's a fantastic question, because I'm hiring right now. So if you're out there, let me know. There are a couple of things that I'm looking at. First of all, I have a spreadsheet where I rate applicants in different facets of SEO. And of course, it depends on what I want that person to do, right? Is technical SEO important? And if yes, what are all the subtopics of technical SEO that I want them to be good at? Is it something like index control, international SEO, something like structured data and schema? Is it log file analysis? So I try to boil it down to specific skills, and I give them a score of 1 to 6, where 6 is they're a worldwide expert in this field, and 1 is they have never heard of this before, right? So I scale them, then I have a quantification of how good they are. But as a second step, I also create an SEO assessment where I give them a task, and I'm very specific and clear in what I want that task to look like, and I send it over and let that person figure it out and see what comes back. So, I always love to use different perspectives when it comes to anything, right? And also to hiring. And so I try to have a quantitative and a qualitative view. The qualitative view comes from interviews and talking to that person directly. The quantitative view comes from the assessments and from the scoring that I give to people. And so if I see this, if, for example, in the assessment that they cannot write properly, then it often means that they cannot think properly, right? Because to me, writing is thinking. And so I try to collect all these data points and then make an informed decision based on data as good as possible.
Excellent. Sounds good. And final question is kind of a fun one, similar to Peter Thiel's. What is something, Kevin, that you believe to be true about SEO that you'd say most in the industry do not believe to be true?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Hats off for that, because I love that question. I really like Peter Thiel, and I like 0 to 1. And so what I believe is true that a lot of people about SEO that a lot of people don't believe is true is that SEO is much more multifactorial than a lot of people would think. And so I need to kind of expand a little bit on that. And I try to make it as quick as possible. So a lot of people think that the problem is often either content or it's backlinks, right? It's a very straightforward thing. Whereas I believe that it is often the combination of several factors, and you want to get them above a certain threshold, right? So it is hard to say that, oh, we're not ranking well because of content or of user intent. Some factors have a higher weight than others, but it might be that you hit user intent perfectly, your content is really good, but then your page speed is okay, and your backlink profile is somewhat weak, right? So you want to make sure that the different factors that are important for your industry and your site get over a certain threshold. And I believe that once the most important factors hit that threshold, really good things start to happen, even though they might not seem logical at all. And that's why sometimes you see sites or pages rank that you go there and like, why is this thing ranking there at all? And I see it on a daily basis. But it comes down to this concept of multifactorial, right? Or multiple factors being at play, which is hard for us to grasp because we like to boil things down to a single problem. But I think in most cases, we have to step back and look at how several factors play together. I hope this is a good answer.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for the good questions. Really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much, Jason. And I guess that's a wrap. And we are close to the end of today's session. So, Kevin, if anybody would like to follow you or connect with you online, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, thanks. Best way to find me, read my stuff is on my website, kevin-indig.com. I'm very active on Twitter and somewhat active on LinkedIn and Facebook, but you find me under my real name on Twitter, Kevin_Indig, or just Google my name.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks to our lovely guests who have joined us today and asked their tricky questions. Thanks to our audience that has been very active in the live chat. And the last, but like the most important, biggest thanks goes to Kevin and Jason. Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your expertise with us, helping us to become better marketers. So very much appreciated, and we hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. See you.